Hello, Namaskar, Vanakkam. My name is Sudhir Sahasranaman and you're watching CBSE with Sudhir. Welcome to part 2 of the first chapter of Social Science for Class 8. This is from Geography, and this particular chapter talks about the natural resources that are present in India and the world with specific reference to India, and we stopped it here at the natural resources curse. That's what we are going to talk about in part 2. This explanation video will be in English. The Hindi one will be done subsequently. Now, I hope you've also seen the first part, which has been done both in English and Hindi separately. So, double mehnat karta hu. Please acknowledge that. Now, the natural resource curse. What exactly does it mean, and why are we calling it a curse? Now, obviously, there are some countries, some regions which have an abundance of natural resources. Now, that could mean petroleum, it could mean timber, it could mean coal, it could mean natural gas, etc. Right? Bauxite, iron ore, etc. Therefore, it is also known as a paradox of plenty when you are not in a position to extract and make good use of it. Because there will always be some countries or regions which have an abundance of a particular natural resource, but do not have the financial resources or the technical expertise whereby they could actually extract and make use of that natural resource wealth. I hope I'm making it very clear. So, having plenty of natural resources does not automatically mean that a country is rich. A country becomes rich only when it will be able to make use of that natural resource. That distinction is very important because economies or countries are not able to make use of that and develop industries that will convert these resources. You may have iron ore, okay, but if you do not have an industry, an iron and steel industry to make use of that iron ore, what use is that iron ore lying beneath your earth, right? That's the point I'm trying to make. So you should be able to use the natural resources to feed your industry. So the industry's presence is very important. How do you establish industry? By having financial resources, by having the technical know-how and the technical knowledge and expertise in order to run those industries, by having the right kind of management and the leadership for those industries. So there are 4 or 5 different factors that come into play in order to be able to ensure that the natural resource does not become a curse. We will learn more about this in the economics chapter at the end of this particular textbook. How has India fared? Now, India has largely avoided this curse by investing in development of such industries. So we have iron ore industries, we have bauxite industry, we have petroleum and natural gas extraction platforms like ONGC, like GAIL, etc. So you have invested in mainly, you have Coal India for coal, you have HPCL, BPCL, Indian Oil, etc. So you have different industries that ensure that you can work in that particular industry, both in the public as well as in the private sector. Now, the challenge of balancing. Okay, what is this question? What do you think are the different inputs required to enable the use? What I just now told you. You need to have the technical know-how, you need to have the financial resources, you need to have the management, you need to have the leadership, you need to have the political leadership and political will to encourage. The big government should also make it easy for industries to set up base in those areas and to be able to use the natural resources in a responsible manner, not like, only for the rich and not for the poor. No, you should have a balance of that. So these 4 or 5 inputs are required. The challenge of balancing resource extraction with sustainability remains because understanding and managing natural resources is a starting point. But human knowledge, good governance, all those points that I'm talking about, strategic planning, they determine whether they can become lasting benefits or temporary windfalls. Because what happens is that if you over extract something over a period of time, that non-renewable resource will actually get finished, right? It has a certain amount and it will get finished if you over exploit. So that's why good planning, good governance all come into play. Now let's talk about how do you ensure responsible and wise use of natural resources. And here is where stewardship is essentially means leadership and governance comes into play. So sustaining life on earth requires that we obviously respect nature. I spoke about it at length in the first part, right? So we use the natural resources in a way that ensures that you are both managing to restore as well as regenerate the renewable resources. Non-renewable is fine, but what is can be renewed, you should be able to take care of that, right? And responsible and judicious, which means responsible use of the non-renewable resources. So the scientists who are, especially those from the Geophysical Survey of India, geophysical research, like organizations like NGRI in Hyderabad, the scientists who are studying these aspects have warned that if you treat in an irresponsible manner all the natural resources, you will only lead to pollution, you will lead to biodiversity loss, and you will lead to climate change. What exactly is meant by biodiversity loss? It means the decline in the variety of life on earth. For example, you have a thick forest. You go and cut all the 1,000 trees in that forest. You have to be a mad person to do that. But suppose a mad person actually is given permission by the authorities, you go ahead and completely finish off a 1,000 tree forest. What is the impact it will have on the climate and specifically the microclimate of that area? That is the thing. Or there are some kind of development of some areas take place. Development is fine. You provide housing, you provide employment, you provide livelihood, everything is fine. But if it happens at the cost of environment, then that is a big red flag. And therefore, which is why good governance is so much important, which is why it is mandatory that whenever you are setting up a new industry, the permission also has to come. The no objection certificate, NOC, also has to be issued by the Ministry of Environment and Forest to ensure that the industry is not harming the environment of that area, right? So I'm giving you a lot of examples to make you understand it in the overall context. So if you just read the book, it'll just be a mass of words, but you understand it, you will be able to explain it better in your answers. So when we are talking about restoration and regeneration of renewable resources, let's take two examples. Let's talk about agriculture. Most farmers in our country, what they do, they dig bore wells. I don't know if you have ever seen a bore well. I've seen a lot of them because I have traveled a lot in the villages. So you dig a bore well to kind of extract water from below, and that's the water you use for irrigation. This is because you cannot depend on the monsoon, because sometimes the monsoon will be erratic, the monsoon will not come on the due date, and thereby your crops, you may have sowed your crops thinking that okay, by the 15th I will get the monsoon, but sometimes 15th may become 25 and you may not get the rains, as a result of which your crops may suffer. So you always need an irrigation source. So irrigation source may or may not come from canals, may or may not come from dams. So you dig a bore well to take water from below, the groundwater, in order to irrigate your crops. Understood? Now, what happens is that in some states, in fact, many states, and that's an extremely disturbing phenomena. I remember doing stories on Telangana. At one time, Telangana's rate of extraction due to bore wells was one of the highest in the country. Now it is much, much better because you have created other sources of irrigation. So in most states, the extraction rate is greater than the rate at which the water table is replenished. Okay, that is the water table. How will it replenish? By the monsoon, by the water seeping in, right? If you harvest the rainwater. But if the rate of, it's like this, you put money in a bank. Okay, you put 20,000 rupees in the bank every month. Okay, but your expenditure, let's assume, is 25,000 rupees per month, and 5,000 rupees you're taking as the loan, borrowing money from someone or the other, which means that your extraction or the spending rate is much more than what you're depositing in the bank. The same way, you're depositing a certain amount of groundwater because of the monsoon, because of conserving and harvesting the rainwater. But if that amount is less than how much water you are extracting by way of bore wells, then it is a problematic situation. It is a dangerous situation, right? So what you essentially do is that if you extract too much of groundwater, that will lead to unavailability of groundwater over a period of time in a certain area, in a certain region, in a certain state. So it has been predicted. For example, Hyderabad extracts about 70% of its groundwater, which is quite high. But what is more, this thing is in states like Punjab, where do you know how much is the rate of extraction? I just did research because it was not there in your book. In Punjab, the rate of extraction is a shocking, and we will be doing a case study, is a shocking 156% because of growing crops like paddy, which need a lot of water. 156%, and Punjab is the most problematic state on this count. Rajasthan is 100%. Other states like Haryana and Uttar Pradesh are also in the danger zone. So you need to be careful in states like these. Delhi has huge groundwater exploitation, again because of the number of population, the kind of population that lives in these cities. These cities are overcrowded, so you're exploiting the groundwater. So it has been predicted that many of our growing cities will soon run out of groundwater. You will not have groundwater to feed and take care of the water needs of your population. So you need to raise the groundwater levels. You need to indulge in water harvesting, rainwater harvesting. I've been saying this in so many of my videos. As responsible citizens, you got to put pressure on wherever you are living to install rainwater harvesting pits. You need to rejuvenate the ponds, something the Telangana government did very well. And I'll tell you something very interesting. If you're interested, if you're not interested, forward in, but I think you need to know about all these things. And this is a conversation my wife had with two water scientists while coming back from the airport. I'm talking about just about 5 days back. See, Telangana government had something called Mission Bhagiratha and Mission Kakatiya. Basically, what the Telangana government under K. Chandrasekhar Rao did, and this is something which they need to be complimented about, because when Telangana, that is old Hyderabad, was ruled by the Nizam, what he had done, and again something very responsible, what he had done was creating many mini ponds in many villages, right? So the water needs of the village would be taken care of by that pond, even when it was summer and there would be water scarcity, right? So many of these ponds and tanks were rejuvenated during the K. Chandrasekhar Rao regime in Telangana. As a result of which the water scarcity got reduced and the dependence on borewell water, digging more and more borewells, reduced during those 10 years of BRS rule, which is very commendable. I'm not talking any politics. I'm talking about a governance system which helped the rural areas, which is why initially I'm talking about 20 years back. 20 years back, if you are traveling by train, and a train route from Chennai to Hyderabad would be through Nellore, Prakasam district, Vijayawada, etc., Guntur. The moment you move from Andhra Pradesh into the Telangana region, right? Immediately the geography, the topography of the area would change. Telangana, Andhra, because of Krishna and Godavari rivers, would be very, very lush green. The moment you got into Telangana, you would see more barren landscape, more brown earth than greenery. Nobody needed to tell you that you are entering Telangana from Andhra, right? Now that's not the case because of all this, because of better irrigation facilities, because of being more responsible with the way you use groundwater, because of the way the water sources have been increased. The central government also started something like the Jal Mission. What these water scientists were saying is that in states like Bihar, this has led to a lot of exploitation, lot of groundwater extraction taking place. And Bihar may also see an Uttar Pradesh, Haryana, Rajasthan, Punjab kind of situation. And the quality of the groundwater in many areas, according to these two water scientists, they said that it is not very good. It is sometimes getting mixed with things like arsenic, and that could create a very difficult situation going forward. So I would assume anyone listening to this who is in a position of authority or power should probably investigate this more deeply, get in probably more water scientists to see whether this kind of a claim is true or not. Because if it is true, it is kind of very dangerous. So you need to be, the larger point I'm trying to make is that you need to be responsible and judicious with respect to how you use and utilize and extract water. Okay. Now, the other important thing that you need to be careful about is that how much of chemical fertilizers, insecticides, and pesticides you use on your crop, right? Because the more pesticides and fertilizers, the chemical fertilizers you use, you are actually spoiling your earth. It's like this. I mean, if I have to make a comparison, if you use a lot of makeup on your face, right? Why is it insisted that before you go to bed, you need to remove all the makeup on your face? Because the makeup is all what? It is some kind of chemical, right? And if it is going to remain on your skin for more than 8 to 12 hours, it is not going to do any good to your skin. It is not the natural turmeric or any other natural ingredient which you may be using. It is some kind of a chemical mixed in, which is why it is insisted that you need to wash your face before you retire to bed. Therefore, similarly, if you use more traditional farming methods, organic methods, without the use of fertilizers, without the use of pesticides or insecticides, you are not hurting Mother Earth. Therefore, it becomes very important that you use cow dung, you use natural fertilizers, you use the process like mulching, multi-cropping, that you grow different. Because if you use, let's say, groundnuts, etc., you are going to increase the legumes, you increase the nitrogen in the soil. What is mulching? Mulching is an agricultural practice of covering the soil surface with leaves, with grass, with straw, with compost, in order to improve the soil health and agricultural and crop productivity. Because this particular layer, it acts as a protective layer over the soil and helps in the retention of moisture in the soil. So that is the, because this was not explained, I kind of have written it down separately. This is what is called, this is meant by mulching. So we must learn. In fact, I remember many districts, in fact, we will be talking about Sikkim, which only uses organic farming. Similarly, there are districts in some parts of India which only does organic farming, in the sense that you do not, you say we are completely organic, which is why you find many supermarkets will have an organic rice, organic pulses, etc., kept separately. They would be more expensive, but essentially you are ensuring chilies in particular, or different kinds of dals, where they are saying that we do not use any pesticides or any other kind of chemicals on the crop. It has been grown in a purely organic manner, and there are separate outlets like 24-letter mantra, which sells only organic different dals, pulses, as I said, chilies, etc. Now let's look at the Punjab example. Okay, Punjab is actually a crisis situation because the groundwater resource has been over exploited and they're completely depleted. They are really vastly reduced at this point in time. Because at one time, when you talk about the green revolution is the agricultural production. That really happened to a large extent in Punjab. But because of the green revolution and later on not taking care of that, we have now, while we have become self-sufficient, it has also led to a depletion of the water resources in Punjab in particular. Okay, I mentioned Punjab 156%, Rajasthan 100%, Uttar Pradesh and Haryana are also a problem case. 1 minute. Okay, so in the 1960s, what happened was farmers shifted to high yielding varieties of wheat and paddy. These needed more water than the traditional type of seeds, right? And farmers, obviously, if you need more water, you will end up extracting more groundwater, right? It's pretty obvious, right? In addition, and this is something very important, Please bear with me because I have a lot of experience in these kind of subjects like agriculture, irrigation. So obviously I get a little excited and I want to make all of you very aware. And at the age of 13, I think you should be aware. See, many states, political parties promise free power. It happened in Andhra Pradesh. It happened in Punjab. It happened in many other states where free power was given to the farmers, right? Which meant essentially that you do not have to pay for the power that you consume on your fields. Now, even though the power would be available at certain times of the day, but you don't have to pay for the power. This led to most farmers installing these borewells, which has to be operated through electricity, because free mein hai, so why not install a borewell? But what it did was your groundwater level kept going down as a result, because everybody was over exploiting it because power was free. Power was free, so water ko exploit karo. That was another reason why this happened. So on one hand, you were kind of growing high yielding varieties of wheat and paddy, and number two, the supply of free power led to over pumping of groundwater, right? So modern farming techniques also required the use of chemical pesticides and fertilizers. So these three things led to the over exploitation of groundwater. Now, the combined effect of these three factors is that the groundwater level in a large part of Punjab, and we'll see that in the next page, has become inaccessible till depths of about 30 meters. You go down to 30 meters, you'll still not find water in large parts of Punjab. And because the chemicals from the pesticides and the fertilizers has got mixed in the groundwater, and then you consume it or you kind of use it for the crops, which means that over a period of time, it becomes part of what? The food cycle. So you're understanding, I hope you're understanding the entire system, how it can operate, right? And I'm trying to make you understand, because you need to know what really is happening over a period of time in Punjab and in many other states in India, right? So this is how the left-hand side image conveys how the groundwater is extracted. And these are the wet paddy fields. I don't know if you have ever gone to a paddy field. Please go. If you never have, if teachers are listening to this, please organize a field trip to any of the rural areas in your state, whichever state you come from, so that students get to, get into these fields, get their feet and hands dirty, understand what the life of a farmer is. It's a very fascinating kind of experience. It will be a very good learning experience for each one of them. Okay. Now, 80%, as I said, of the area of Punjab has been classified as over-exploited of water. And we have drawn water at a rate much greater than the restoration or rejuvenation of that water. As I gave you the example of a bank, same kind of a thing is happening. So we can see that while the food security, while the people of Punjab and other states, the food has been taken care of, but the food has come at a cost, the cost of our water resource. Okay, that's dangerous and you need to be aware of this. So just look at the Punjab state, the portions which are marked in deep red, okay, not the pink one, the deep red, there you see the depth to water level. It is a crisis situation in the areas which are marked red, and these contain some of the biggest and the most important cities like Ludhiana, Patiala, Bhatinda, Sangrur, right? Moga. These are all the big cities out here. Then you have Chandigarh here, Jalandhar, Kapurthala, Hoshiarpur. This is Amritsar. So these are all the important towns and cities around which both urban population and rural population live. And therefore, Punjab is a ticking time bomb as far as the water situation is concerned. The groundwater situation is concerned. Now, let's next come to the case of cement. What is it about cement? You see this photograph of the Jaisalmer fort in Rajasthan, where a mud structure which was built in the 20th century and thereafter it was repaired using sandstone. Now, obviously cement, any work that you need, you obviously need cement, obvious, right? There are many companies which manufacture cement, some of the biggest cement companies. Now, everything you need cement, but the production of cement is a highly polluting activity, right? Because the cement manufacturer, if you have ever seen a cement factory, it kind of releases very fine dust particles, which will be on your skin. You will inhale. All this is not good for human life, for animal life, or even for plant life, right? It enters our lungs and those of animals, damaging them, settles on the leaves of plants, as a result of which the entire breathing and respiration process, the photosynthesis process of plants, etc., also gets affected. It causes soil and water pollution. It kind of settles on the water bodies, that also pollutes. So cement factories, which is why it's always very important to establish them away from human habitation, and also in an area where there isn't much plant or animal vegetation also, so that you try to minimize the effects of pollution from cement factories. Okay. Now, as far as the Central Pollution Control Board or the state pollution control boards, which are there in different states, they have a list of guidelines that cement factories have to follow. Okay, so that you try to minimize the pollution caused by the cement factories. There is also another move that, okay, there are these kind of issues because of cement. Why not use more traditional material for construction of different kinds of residential or commercial properties? You use more of stones, you use more of mud, you use more of plant-based materials or recycled materials from waste plastic, right? So you use them, so as long as their strength remains the same, you use them in order to. But when you're talking about stone, it does not mean that you go and blast all the mountains in your area. That's another risk. So, life is not easy. You need to drive a balance between what the environment has given us naturally and what we should do in the name of development. Okay. So here you see a building which has been built in Auroville, which is made of mud using special techniques. And while you look at it, it doesn't look any different from any other building which uses bricks and cement. So that's how you need to ensure that the process of production is less polluting, provides local employment to the local people, and there also takes care of the climate, the local climate of that particular area. So here we need to talk about a particular ancient Indian botanical science called Vrikshayurveda. Vriksha, which means tree. Ayurveda is, of course, the ancient medication science, right? So the term comes from Sanskrit, and Ayurveda means the science of life or health. So this kind of goes back to almost 10th century. So this was based on whatever knowledge you gain from study of different kinds of plants, and you saw how seeds were collected, how they were preserved, how the pre-planting techniques were used, irrigation techniques, all that is described a lot in the Vriksha Ayurveda. And basically, it's talking about more sustainable form of agriculture, that you do agriculture which does not use fertilizers, does not use pesticides, insecticides. You use water in a more judicious, responsible manner, right? And you grow crops which are in keeping with the climate and the weather of that area. You grow paddy or sugarcane, which are water intensive crops, only when you have a good source of water. You should not be exploiting groundwater and using it for crops like sugarcane and paddy. For example, Uttar Pradesh, one of the reasons why Uttar Pradesh is also considered to use a lot of groundwater is because sugarcane is grown to a large extent in the state of Uttar Pradesh. Maharashtra and Uttar Pradesh, and to an extent Karnataka, these are the three major sugarcane growing crops in India. So you need to ensure the proper methods of how you plow the soil, right? So that the moisture in the soil, the natural moisture is retained, right? You also have fungi, bacteria, and earthworms, so that the health of the soil health is taken care of. Let's now look at a case coming from Sikkim, which basically makes a fantastic case for using organic farming. Now, Pema is a character which has been used in even class 7 books by NCERT. Their family farm in Sikkim, they live in Sikkim, faced declining yields. The yields were going down. And because they were using lots of chemical fertilizers and pesticides, the money they were making from growing crops was also going down, because the expenditure was more than their revenue, the income they would get by selling the crops. Then the state government of Sikkim said that we will promote organic farming. Organic farming is when farmers do not use any kind of pesticides, insecticides, or chemical fertilizers. So Pema's families decided that, okay, let's also make use of this, and we will also do organic farming. But it was not an easy move. For so many years, let's say 10 years, 20 years, they have been doing chemical fertilizers and pesticides based farming. Suddenly, if you shift to this, you will have a problem, right? Because the soil was not prepared for it. The soil over a period of time had got so much of pesticides and insecticides and fertilizers in it. Suddenly you say that, okay, now you will not get anything of this. If you are used to eating only pizza and burger every day, and suddenly your mother says from tomorrow you will eat only proper healthy food, no fast food for you, no unhealthy snacks for you, your body will react. Your body will say, no, I want the fast food, I want the burger, I want the pizza, right? So it will take some time for your tongue and your body to get used to the new healthy form of food, right? I hope you are not the types who eats burgers and pizzas on a regular basis. I was seeing a reel only yesterday which talked about 5 things that would most definitely cause cancer. And I must tell you this, very interesting. The first thing that the doctor said was white bread. White bread will cause cancer in the long run. Number 2 is maida. That, okay, he said, if you live in Delhi, you will eat chole bhature, but try to minimize it, don't overeat it. Then colas, the Cokes, etc. The Cokes and the Pepsis, again, are a no-no. Then all kinds of this packaged juices, again a no-no. I've forgotten the 5th one. I've forgotten the 5th one, but he mentioned 5 foods. Yes, of course. It was not a food. He says drinking water in a plastic bottle. No. In fact, I do not use plastic bottles to drink water from at home. If you have seen me, I don't have it right now. I always drink it from a glass bottle. So please do that. Avoid drinking water from plastic bottles at home as much as possible, even outside. Okay, this is something which I want to tell you. And if parents listening to me, please do that. Shift to glass bottles. Be more healthy and ensure health for your family. So initially the yields of Pema's family in Sikkim dropped because the soil was not ready to shift to organic use. But gradually they shifted to compost. They used natural pest repellents like neem and garlic instead of using pesticides, and they started growing multiple crops. And after about 5 years, Pema's farm was thriving. Means it was kind of fantastic, right? She was able to sell cardamom, ginger, adrak, and traditional vegetables at premium prices. And in 2016, Sikkim became a 100% organic state with all the farms certified organic. So you get only organic produce from any farm in the state of Sikkim. What a fantastic thing. And local biodiversity, which means, local insects, earthworms, birds, animals, the biodiversity of that area flourished. Insects and birds returning, tourism increased because people love to see this country where there is a lot of natural wonder. And farmers' incomes grew by 20% on an average because they were no longer spending money on buying chemical fertilizers, pesticides, and insecticides. Isn't this fantastic? And Sikkim, therefore, for the rest of the country is a role model. It's a role model to say that, a region can decide to transform itself. And that's what is probably required in many states. The political will, because if your free power is leading to over exploitation of groundwater, there is a problem. The politicians, just to get votes from the farmer community, cannot say that, we will give everything free kind of thing. You got to be responsible towards the environment. You cannot think only about your votes and about your power. I mean, this is a message I want to send out. Then what is required is responsible and judicious use of resources, because whenever a resource is non-renewable, right, you need to ensure that we shift to renewable resources of energy, right? for as much as possible. Coal is a non-renewable resources, whereas hydel energy, wind energy, solar power, these are all renewable, right? So we need to use these kind of sources of energy as much as possible. You see this particular satellite image of one of the largest solar parks which exist in Rajasthan. You travel in the southern part of Tamil Nadu, you will see a whole lot of windmills, right? Because wind energy is tapped into. This taps solar power, and this can generate enough electricity to power about 15% of the current needs of Rajasthan. So this is how you see the solar park, which is near Raichur in Karnataka. Raichur is in the central part of Karnataka, bordering Andhra Pradesh, right? So that's where you see. So this is impressive. A large farm you have installed. There is a particular cycling track in Hyderabad, in the financial district of Hyderabad. The cycling track has been done, and this was done in Korea. So you have copied a good mechanism, very good, right? You have modeled it on that. So on top of that cycling track, you have put solar panels, so that you make use of every piece of real estate you can get in order to power it with energy. So whatever street lamps, etc. are there, the solar power can take use of it. You don't need to use the electricity from the main grid for this. So the International Solar Alliance is very important, where India and France, they launched it in 2015. So it basically, this is something which Prime Minister Modi has also spoken about to a large extent, that India, because of the kind of country, tropical climate it is, it gets a lot of sun energy, and we need to be able to tap that free source of solar power, right? Our building, in fact, has a solar power on top. Geysers are used as a result of that. So that kind of thing is also very important. I remember the engineering college where my daughter went to, where there also the geysers, the power was from solar power, right? So you should be able to harness solar power. And this particular International Solar Alliance focuses on countries which are blessed with abundant sunlight like India. And it helps to kind of, you put billions of dollars into solar projects across developing nations, so that you use solar energy to a large extent across the world, right? Which is completely pollution free. So the Bhadla Solar Park, whose photograph you saw earlier in Rajasthan, is a symbol of India's solar ambitions, that we want to have this connect with the sun god, and a country can transform from traditional energy methods to these kind of renewable alternatives like wind energy, like solar energy. So that is something very important, because even our it will take care of air pollution. Okay, we will kind of not use our fossil fuels so much, because again, to renew them is going to be a Herculean task. And the Bhagavad Gita refers to the Loka Sangraha, which means that everyone should not think only about your personal desires. You should also think about the well-being of ourselves and the well-being of our planet Earth. We all need to be equally responsible for that. Okay, with this we come to the end of this thing. You can read these 4 points which are written, which talk about this entire chapter in a nutshell. I hope with the kind of detail I've gone into, you would be able to understand this to a large extent and be able to look at any questions that come from this chapter in detail. Okay, thank you very much for your time, your patience, and your support. Do share this video with your classmates, with your juniors next year, and also subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Tata, bye bye. Thank you very much. Namaskar.